their salaries and stuff. But if you go to Upper Kabete, you'll be shocked how many ideas researchers brought out which have not been commercialized or taken into commercialization. And this is, we blame ourselves, we blame the government, we also blame people who look at universities as ivory towers. I think also the second question which you brought into this was the digital services tax. I don't think that is as worse as turnover tax. Government at the moment should be pumping money into SMEs because SMEs have become the refugee for those who have lost formal jobs, those who are working in the hotel industry, those who are working in manufacturing, the industries that have been affected by COVID are labor-intensive industries, meaning there are people out there who are crying, and because there is nothing they are doing, they run into SMEs. Then the government follows them there to tax 1%, and usually their margins are so small because we have too many middlemen. The mamambogas, their profit margins range between 1 and 6%. Then government comes and tells them, oh, we are taking 1%. This is where the problem is. Government should see what is happening and be able to provide the right incentives for people to survive. So that's what I can say about that, and hopefully Professor can add something.
Okay, Professor Iraki?
I can add something. I think what Professor Demo is saying is very important, because when government makes policies, one of the questions we always ask is it based on research? And that's where academicians come, because academics like us can do very objective research. They have no vested interest, and they can give you the information you need to make the decision you want. For example, one of the hunches I've been having, and many people not agree with me, is that the government might actually collect more revenues at a VAT of 14% and 16%, surprisingly. Because if the tax is low, then people consume more. So you get more goods and services, and then you get more taxes. You focus on volume instead of focusing on units. Now that apart, the question of academic influence, I've said they can influence the policies by doing research, giving objective research. But there's a way that Americans have done it, and it has been very successful. One of the things I was doing recently is to look at the board of directors of some of the American top companies: Facebook, Google, IBM, Xerox, LinkedIn. Check all of them. I can guarantee you almost all those companies have an academic or a professor or so in the board. And such professors give a very good link between what is happening in academia and what is happening in the real world. Here, we are, as the professor put it, we are always seen as antagonists. Academics, government, they're always fighting. They don't see as if they can complement each other. And until we do that, we are going to see some very unusual decisions being made that are not based on facts, they're not based on research, and sometimes they are counterproductive. I think that's all that I can say about that question.
Actually, if VAT was to be lowered to around 8%, half what it is from 16, the government will collect more revenue. This is what studies show globally. But when they make it 16, people do anything to avoid it, including bribing, because there is room to bribe and actually save something out of it. So what has happened in many countries is that to lower the tax rate so that compliance is very high. Our compliance is around 30%. 70% is tax which is not paid. So we need to create an incentive that people don't have an incentive to default, but would rather have incentive to pay because the amount is so small.
Okay, fantastic. I think Professor Iraki and Professor Bitange, you've done justice to that question. So probably as an institution of higher learning, because I think that is the concern, I think we have a role to play, probably to start forums, to sensitize the stakeholders on what needs to be done. So for me, I see that as an opportunity. And I think we have what it takes to start that conversation with the key stakeholders. So thank you, Professor Iraki. Your presentation has brought quite a good discussion there. I now want to welcome Professor Bitange Demo to do his presentation, and then after that, we'll engage him. Professor,
I want to make one comment so that I don't forget and interfere with this presentation.
Yes.
Just two quick ones. The first one is, if we have to come up with the fifth industrial revolution, we must expect resistance.
Yes.
I hope you have noted one of the most successful products in Kenya, which is M-Pesa, has not been embraced by the Western countries because that might destroy the cards and so on. So we must be aware of that when we come up with a new idea. Number two, when we talk of CBC, I think this is Orindi who asked that question about primary school, secondary school, and university. One of the questions I've been asking is, if you look at our forums at the University of Nairobi, we have, for example, guest speakers coming to talk to us at the University of Nairobi. Have we ever invited State House girls who we share a fence with? Have we ever invited Nairobi Primary School who we share a fence with? And I think that is one way to understand what's happening in primary school, what's happening in high school as we interact with them, so that we see things in totality. Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. Great insight there. We should start with our Jerusalem, high schools, primary school, and they can give us good ideas. Even they can give us probably a base, even to engage other stakeholders. So thank you for that challenge. And also thank you for the reminding us that when you come with an innovation, or a breakthrough, as we did in M-Pesa, there's a lot of resistance. And I think we should do it because like M-Pesa has been very well adopted in Kenya. So that has saved us a lot of money of people using cards. So we are actually using the money within the country. So I think that is very good. And I think the greatest innovation are faced with a lot of resistance. So we should be prepared for that. And I think we have what it takes to do that. If we did M-Pesa, we can do it. That will be my parting shot. And thank you, Professor Iraki, for that wonderful presentation and broadening our world view about entrepreneurship, innovation, the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm happy that it's still early in the morning. We can make fifth industrial revolution happen. Asante sana. Can we offer Professor Iraki an online clap because of a job well done? So thank you. Okay, fantastic. Now I want to welcome Professor Bitange Demo to share with us his presentation. Bitange, karibu.
Yeah. I think, Professor, yeah, I can see it. Thank you once more for giving me the opportunity to make a presentation on this very key aspect of our life. Into the meat of this, I was reading a book, actually rereading a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, a Canadian writer. And he goes into details to explain how people became very rich. The people you know, multi-billionaires from the US, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, they were all born in a space of 9 years. And he goes on to explain that it would have actually happened to anybody who was born around there, because the ones you know are the ones who made a lot of money. But there's others who made very good money. And why? Because they were born right before the second industrial revolution. We had the first industrial revolution when things like energy, the use of mechanization of farming and other things. But these people were born just before the beginning of 1900, when the second industrial revolution was beginning, when people were talking about mass production. That is what gave them money. And then people like Bill Gates came in when the third industrial revolution was underway. They took advantage of the ICTs, telecommunications and stuff, the computing, what they call the age of computing, and made so much money. And you rarely find that there are people who made money, a lot of money, in the space when there was no new industrial revolution coming into place. This is to say that even those who have made money took advantage of some serious change that was going on. Now, we have moved into the fourth industrial revolution, but people are still asking precisely what is it, and how do we take advantage of this fourth industrial revolution, be able to also make money like the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, all those who are very rich. So the first I said was mechanization, the second was mass production, the third was automation, computers. If you look from the first to the third, they were solving a major issue. That issue is productivity. We don't often talk about productivity. I'm saying we, as in Africa here, if we did, we would have paid attention that subdivision of land lowers productivity, meaning that when we were growing up, people like myself, because there was much bigger land, people alternated crops, people had more space for land, productivity was much higher. Actually, even disease was much lower. Now, if you read WHO, they will tell you we have more cancers because we are utilizing land, the same piece of land, that is where we grow maize, and we think by putting more fertilizer, we would get higher productivity. And then we would be better off. It doesn't get better. The way of looking at productivity actually, the relationship between input and output. How much do I put in and how much do I get out of this? If we did, then we could begin to deal with the issue of poverty in this country. As a young student in Nyeri, there was a lot of coffee. And when parents began to subdivide that coffee to give the sons, coffee people began to uproot because they could no longer make money out of maybe 1 acre or half acre. Because in anything you have a point we call the break-even point. In tea, for example, you need to have at least 2 acres in order to break even and make money. But we are not able to break even if the entire land is 2 acres and I've grown coffee or tea on half acre. You won't break even. The best you could do, the money you are using on that, if you buried it, you'll be better off than actually having that half acre of tea or coffee. This is the argument which we need to understand from the beginning. Then came the third industrial revolution, the same thing, dealing with issues of productivity. If you recall, some of us, whenever we went to school, we were told we will send you pocket money. And they will send it via poster, which was the fastest means of getting the money. And you go to the poster, then you would throw the money. Or they give a matatu. If God allows that it gets to where you are, you can get the money, or if it doesn't get there, you don't get the money. Still, it was a very unproductive way of doing things. Come M-Pesa, it takes a split second. Because most of you are academics, you can understand what you call the cost of inefficiency. If somebody was sick in Nyeri and you want that person discharged today, if it was 20 years ago, it will take a maximum of 2 to 3 days to discharge that person who has already been discharged by doctors. Meaning the 3-day addition to the food you are eating in a hospital is the cost of inefficiency, because today you can send within a minute and the patient is released. So when we talk about electronics, you are able to send email at the speed we're doing now, you're able to send money. We have become more productive. But the fourth industrial revolution says that is not even more productive. We could do even much better. So what is going to happen? That is what you need to know. And then you need to understand what is it that you will do in order to take advantage of the emerging technologies. So I will take you through those technologies that we are going to see, big data, which I think you now understand. I can pick any product or anything so that you are able to understand around big data. Like, for example, media. Media needs to understand who reads, what articles they read. They read Professor Iraki's articles, how many who read it, what type of articles from Professor Iraki that people read. You need that data so that you can improve by understanding that data. You also need data, the things I was saying about the mistakes our parents did by excessive subdivision of land, it comes from data now. You know how many acres would you have to have of maize in order to break even? How many acres would you have to have for tea in order to break even? I have a very small land in my place, and I had 1 acre of tea. And the tea pickers demanded they increased their salaries to 15 shillings per kg. And I was telling them it is not productive for me, or it is not cost effective for me to pay you 15, because the entire amount you harvest, I end up paying you and I pay other people to need this. They refused to understand, so I uprooted the tea. They lost their jobs because it cost me, it continued, because those of you who know, every factory pays at a certain rate. Our factory was paying at 13 shillings per kg, and I'm giving the picker on green leaves at 15. So when it comes to dry, I am in total loss. You actually need to do those numbers so that you know whether you are doing it for people to see that you are doing something, or you are doing it that for you, that you are making money. These are the debate, and that is all around big data. How much can I improve in terms of output? Not much. Even if you put fertilizer on tea, sometimes you don't increase the output itself. So you need to have the data. I was talking to some people the other day on the consumptions. We don't have the consumption. We are all in trade, but we don't know what exactly people consume. If you read about the immigrants who traveled to US during the 18th, 19th century, they would go around shops to find out which product is scarce, and that is the product they would produce. Those were entrepreneurs, and what they were doing is actually what we call market research. And if all of us are able to go around, walk around and say, what is it that is not produced so that I produce it? You would find a lot of very rich people in our midst, because they would have ready market. Of course, others would see and begin to come in. You need to change that. So data is very key. So the other day I was mentioning the consumption patterns, and I had to spend money to get data from online, which is done by foreigners on our consumption patterns. Fish, we consume in excess of 800,000 tons a year, but we produce only 200,000 tons. And there was this opportunity of 600 tons, which Chinese began to feel, and we started complaining about the Chinese. We should have complained to universities, how come you don't know we consume this, and we tell people to do precisely this to fill the gap. Meat consumption, and this is a more controversial one. We consume between 1.4 and 1.6 million tons of beef, but we produce no more than 900,000. And that most of that comes from Somalia, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and the likes. And we keep on asking, which business should I do? Just by rearing goats and feed them well, you become a millionaire in Kenya, because the opportunity is enormous, but we don't see that as an opportunity. I was talking to Professor Kimani Apakapete, and they said in demo, beans, if it's not for Ethiopia and Tanzania, we won't have food. And I said, what are you talking about? Then he said our consumption hovers around 800 to 900,000 tons. We only produce 300,000. So Tanzanian suppliers, Ethiopian suppliers, and nobody has said these dry lands, or let me hang on with Professor Iraki, I go to Nyahururu and they grow 50 acres of beans. All that, if you are very careful and maintain the seed, what do you call it? The brand or the type, you would actually get the money. So we don't supply our people with the data to provide the needs that we have in this country. So what happens with meat, when there is drought and there is no supply from Somalia or Ethiopia, we go up not to steal. And nobody has ever asked that if someone stole your cows and they are walking, won't you find them in the morning still walking with the ngombes and the bush? And this is because the trucks go there, the cows are loaded at 10. By dawn in Nairobi, they have been slaughtered. So that is because there is more demand than supply. And that is what we are supposed to come and say, let us exploit this space. I've said enough of data. What you are going to see from now on, Internet of Things, is being deployed everywhere. When Kenya Power says we are going to put some meters in your place, they want to cut the costs of people coming to read the meter, and the systems can read that meter and get it back. They had a pilot, they found the pilot is actually catching them stealing, so they stopped it. I think now they're gonna go the meter reading, they will charge Kenyans without knowing. But this is going to read and also relay the same information to the owner. Not just that, you are going to see insurance companies using Internet of Things because they want to know when you drive your vehicle, the speeds you drive it, how you drive it, That's all Internet of Things. Then I'm going quickly on application of this because this is the thrust of the whole thing. Machine learning, which is part of artificial, actually big data, machine learning, and the AI are all in what you call data. But the machine is trained to look at the data or look at the images, and it's able to regurgitate. And one of the applications that you are going to see, which is so important, is language, because we have had a problem with language for many, many years. But this is going to be a thing of the past. You can talk Kimeru and I talk Kisi. We understand perfectly each other because the translation can be instantaneous. And you can talk to a Mzungu in your vernacular and actually deliver the meaning you meant. Often, if you go to public places when a politician talks about, I want you people to improve productivity, the interpretation you find is that we go back home and make more children, because this is a very technical term. We don't translate English to our vernacular properly. This is what machine learning will do so many, but I'm giving you an example. This is what leads to robotics, because you are able to train a machine to be able to repeat the same thing that you'll be able to do. Artificial intelligence then becomes, this is the most important of technologies that's going to change our lives. One of the applications, which is in Nairobi here, is what we call adaptive learning. Adaptive learning is to look at the way, the speed at which you comprehend things, and the things are delivered at that speed. The way God created us, some will take much slower, some faster, some, and then we call those ones geniuses. You have geniuses who are introverts. They don't have to tell you, but they understand. But even talking back to you can take time, and you confuse them for foolishness. This means every child, those who suffer from autism, those who suffer from dyslexia, those who suffer from ADHD, would actually go all the way to PhD, when we used to call these people, they are foolish. And this is what the question Mary was asking. How come there are some people who are very good entrepreneurs who didn't go to school? Maybe the rate of their comprehension, they could have actually gone as far as they've gone, but the rate of comprehension was not equal to yours. And society said they are fools, but they comprehended everything that they understood at their own speed. And so when they become entrepreneurs, they become so good, to the extent that some researchers were almost concluding that you have to be a little stupid in order to be a good entrepreneur, which is false, because it is now very clear from AI that you can teach any child to become what you want them to become. This is the AI also, you are going to see AI in health to provide you with predictiveness of either diseases or other things. AI in education, AI in transportation, driverless vehicles and other stuff. AI in finance, because apps like Polisa, the lending apps, they use artificial intelligence by digging into the data and be able to predict whether you will be able to repay. That is AI. AI has enabled the financial sector that we are now talking about inclusively. You don't have to know that it is behind your mobile phone, but it is there. Because blockchain, which is the technology that is going to underpin what we call cryptocurrency, in another 3 years or 4 years, we are going to move out of cash and the move to crypto. You've had, say, China talking about central bank backed cryptocurrencies, CBDCs. It is going to be alive. People like us in Kenya who have used M-Pesa for a long time, it is going to help us. One of the things, because use of blockchain gives you a chance to almost tell the truth to someone even before you meet the person. What this means is that you could, if I'm running for governor, for example, and I go to IABC and they ask me what they used to do or what they're doing, I think they're going to change next time, is they would say, can you tell us, can you bring us a report from the CID, a report from tax, a report from the credit bureaus and stuff. That's not going to be like that. All those will be digitized. A report from the university you went through, universities will be digitized. So once you go to IBC, they would ask you, George, can you allow us to, this is according to the data protection law, allow us to see your data. And you say yes, and they can look at your past data and be able to know that you qualify or not, because there are so many people who they didn't have degrees in the range for governorship. So that is what technologies like blockchain are going to validate and be able to help. Then, very important, I'll go quickly because I want to finish. Every time new technology comes, like internet, Americans made money out of it, created Googles and other things. We was the rest of the world. Mobility came with mobile platforms, social media. Now blockchain has come. It is for us now to think, how are we going to leverage this and create businesses? This is the time, and you are here, you are listening to this. And I said before that those who became rich during the second industrial revolution took advantage of that, and the third industrial revolution the same. In the fourth industrial revolution, we have a chance to do something. So this is, I was talking about blockchain, how it works. I've explained IBC, electoral body. And these are the principles. Here you have a shared ledger, smart contract, consensus, and permissions. But on the evolution of data, and this is so important. I talked about it when I talked at the beginning. What we've been looking at is the hindsight. When we do research today, we do research by asking people what happened. And then we do the analysis and this is what happens, and theorize that if this happened, it would happen this way. But much has changed, and I think you are going to see changes in research methods, because people now know inside what happened and why. This is called diagnostic analytics. Or they can do predictive analytics where they look at forward, what will happen, when, and why. For example, the hurricanes, they are able to predict where it's going to land and stuff like that. Even there's another book I was reading called Serendipity, that you can even determine the future of your child by taking advantage of what is known today and predict what would happen in the days to come. But most people still don't trust that. Of course, simulation and decision making, you have robots now doing that. And then a self-learning, completely automated enterprise, what with cognitive analytics, or what we call artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, just take it from me, that it is going to be the most important technology of our time. and we just need to figure out what is it going to happen. See what it has done in the banking sector, that 90%, 90-something percent of transactions with equity are actually online. KCB follows there, even Co-Bank. The banking sector has been completely changed because of these technologies. But the socioeconomic consequences, there are socioeconomic consequences. Of course, what we are hoping is that we are going to see a lot of efficiencies, a lot of productivity, but at some cost. Because a lot of people will be careless with their data, as they have been with social media. Several organizations would have our data. Even though we have the data protection law, individually we must be very careful on what data and when to give it and who to give it, because there is going to be a lot of abuses. That is the downside. Of course, everywhere in Africa, you see the yellow, those are the fiber optics. When we were talking about fiber optics in 2009, people didn't understand at all. Now they are flying all over the place, but we still haven't covered everywhere. New technologies are going to come. And I think the current voice that we have is going to switch from that, and most of the calls will be through ways of IP. A lot of people use that in their WhatsApps and other social media apps. So things are changing, but don't just talk or send SMS or whatever. Think on how to use. The biggest impact that I've seen, Mary and I used to have women come to the university, and I got to know a number of them. Then I went to see one of them introduced us to some women at Aga Khan, the opposite Aga Khan, the market, the city market. When COVID came, the first 2 weeks, they could not sell anything. They could not sell a thing. And then she said, now mwalimu ni kitu ni mbaya. So what I did, I said, well, you need to compete with the juniors, you need to compete with other companies that are online, and just showed them very simple, use your WhatsApp, send a message to your customers and say you can take them the supplies. And some of them were surprised. And then they said, how then do I take when somebody has ordered? I said, just get the borders. 2 days of training on how to use Google Maps. By the 5th day, they were effectively up to 50% of their sales. I think they went up to 90%. So meaning that in today's world, you have to be ICT first to do any business. You would collapse if you don't think about that. And what that says, governments must ensure that we have broadband in every corner. That's how they can facilitate micro, small, and medium enterprises to succeed. So the government has done well by creating the trusted identity, that is the biometric. It's going to play a major role in the emerging tech. So let me stop there. And I could actually talk the whole day, but I can stop here. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Demo, for that engaging presentation on the fourth industrial revolution. I will allow now my audience to raise their comments and questions. Yeah, your opportunity now. The professor of innovation and entrepreneurship, and I want to label him fourth industrial revolution, has spoken. So let me hear from the audience. Okay, they are all quiet, but please confirm you can hear me, at least.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. At least, you know, when we ask questions, sometimes it's just to confirm that we are being heard. I've even heard that the most common question now globally, as we use this virtual platform, is that, can you hear me? That is the phrase that is trending globally. So thank you, John. Thank you, John, for confirmation. I can hear someone talking.
Yes,
please, you can. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Dr. Emma Otieno. I have a question for Professor Ndemo. You can hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Professor, for the insightful information that you've given us. It's actually a very timely discussion. I was just thinking, from your view as a very, with a vast knowledge in this area, I don't know if the government is ready to support us as we move through into this first industrial revolution, especially with the decisions being taken, like introducing additional taxes, like the digital tax. What would your view be, or what would be your advice to government? Is it timely that we start making it more difficult by introducing additional taxes? We should make it. We should create an enabling environment and make it easier and easier for Kenyans, so that we really move into this digital space to take advantage of these as for fast adoption of industrial revolution. So what's your opinion? What is your take on these kinds of policies by the government? Thank you.
Sometimes,
yeah, great.
At the moment now, you can understand why government is touching everywhere. We borrowed too much. We don't have other sources of revenue. So they would have, for example, now, look at what happened, the more tax on fuel, which is going to fuel inflation, which is going to make it more expensive. So you ask yourself, what was the minister thinking? Do you really need inflation now when people don't have any money? Of course, matatus are going to raise. They have to get it to the people. But there is nothing you do. The digital tax, the services tax was a mistake. Because, as I said, even Amamboga now, they use that. And now they are going to look at how many transactions, whatnot, and everything. Then talk about the turnover tax. Hurting the very small Mamambogas. So I think if government, I was analyzing a report from FSD last week. Look at what has happened. Everybody is suffering, especially the low income earners, those who have lost jobs and everything. They are rushing into SME sector. And if you look at the shanties, yeah, all shanties, government doesn't have schools in shanties. I mean, 96% of schools in Kipra are actually private schools which are charging low fees. Now, people are not able to pay that fees. Then the teachers have been fired because they can't get the money. So the people who would be hurt most is the very poor. And in as much as the minister says, oh, we have free education and whatever, you ask how many teachers have students in public schools. So there is a disconnect there. But a few years ago, most of us went to public schools. Just a few years ago, we went to public schools. Now, public schools has been left for the very poor, and those who have a little incomes of 15 to 20,000 go to those private schools in the shanties. Now, the pandemic has killed it. The recommendation is that government needs to subsidize. Why have a tax when you should have not tax them, most poor, so that they are able to pay for it. So like Professor Iraki said, I wish they could ask academics to do a bit of research and say, if you touch this sector, it pains more. But it doesn't happen. Now you find the economists in Treasury there, in their thinking, they are thinking middle class, but not knowing that the application of their decisions is going to affect those in the low income.
Okay, fantastic, Professor Demo. Any other comments from the participant? I want to minimize my talking as much as possible to give you opportunity to interact with the Professor Bitange. Okay, fantastic. I think, Professor Bitange, I think you have done well. I like what you talked about, the data gaps. And I think that's a great opportunity for us as an institution to see how we can actually take up that. Because I think in our earlier conversation, Professor Iraki talked about that we are consumers. In fact, I usually tell people, we all know the problems that we face. I think, as Prof. Iraki said, it's an early in the morning, we can still take action. So for me, as I finalize this webinar, I want to say that each one of us has a responsibility to take action, to add innovation, to add entrepreneurship, and even to add the fourth industrial revolution. And as Iraki put it, also the fifth industrial revolution. I know a lot of the conversation that we talk about is who and who should do it. But I think the challenge is that let's ask each one of us, what action are we taking toward being innovative, toward being entrepreneurial, and also taking opportunity? Because we know all these things from first industrial revolution to fourth industrial revolution, and now to what Prof. Iraki has talked about, the fifth industrial revolution. So I would like a call to action to all of us. I know as university, as Professor Demo, you have talked about it, and Professor Iraki, we have the power even to start a conversation like we are having here, with even government stakeholders, with even entrepreneurship ecosystem, like the women entrepreneurs we had at the School of Business. And as we move on, the conversation will change, the worldview will change, and we'll start seeing action of fruits, as it were, of being innovative, being entrepreneurial. That would be my parting shot. And I can hear there's somebody who wants to say something. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Professor Bitange Demo and Iraki for sharing the wealth of knowledge with us. Thank you very much. If there's somebody who had an issue before I close, you can raise. Yes.
I want to say, Prof, you had a call to action, which is good, but
yeah,
I think we need to say, I've been a bureaucrat before, and that's why I am saying,
yeah.
We could do more, but the mistakes people made before with respect to governance led to government creating laws which can't help us come from where we are. I think the first thing we need to do is to do proper research to show how the current legal laws, in especially procurement, have put the universities behind. They cannot do anything. If today I had the money and I go to Upper Kabeta and say, okay, I want us to go invest in cheese, the first thing you'll be told, oh, did you tender? And the tender goes, it takes 6, 7 months, 1 year. Someone comes and says, oh, you want to exploit the university. I think we must deal with ourselves first and deal with government. The laws we have, no other way, no other part of the world they exist. You cannot work. There's nothing you can do. And I think that's why we don't even have toilet paper in the toilets, because this procurement, that procurement followed this and that. I'm not saying we should not have laws in procurement, but it must be reasonable laws.
Yes, yes, Professor, I hear you. I think especially the roles that you have pointed, procurement is actually a hindrance to many, many innovative activities. I agree with you. So having said that, yes.
There's just a funny example about procurement.
Yes.
I know an office that requested to procure insecticide because there are a lot of mendes and cockroaches. By the time insecticide came,
yeah,
the cockroaches had died naturally.
Okay, fantastic. Professor Iraki, we agree one of our challenges is the procurement roles. And I want to say thank you for agreeing to participate in this webinar. These are great professors from the School of Business, Professor Iraki and Bitange. Asanteni sana. I also belong to that great school. So I would like the participant to clap.
I'm assuming they were muted.
Yeah, that was great.
But really, what were the objectives of this? Was it to inform the university that we become better or what?
The objectives, we believe that the young people are the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. This knowledge needs to go out to the young people who are studying here and also who want to study here. So that's why we did this. We will still share this information on YouTube so that whoever wants to benefit from it can benefit from it later on. But I think it's an excellent webinar. We have all learned a lot, something new, which we did not know. Yes.
Sorry, I got logged out when I was finalizing. And thank you very much. I didn't hear the clap because my internet connectivity went through. And I would like to hear you clapping for these great professors. As already I said, you have learned a lot. So let's put our mics on and clap for them. So thank you very much. Unless, John, you want to say something?
No, mine just to emphasize what you have said. We really blessed to have the two professors, and of course yourself today from the School of Business. We are very grateful for the sacrifice you've made to share with us the knowledge that's very critical for development in this era. So I want to thank all of you, the moderator, for the able moderation and also the presenters. I also want to thank the online audience who have logged in to participate in this webinar. We are looking forward to having you again on such forums so that the society, not only our university, but also the society can also tap into your knowledge. Thank you very much.
Okay. So thank you very much. The webinar is over. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Professor.